Hi, everybody. I'm the world famous internet superstar Nuko4, and today I'm joined by the development team of Kumitantei Old School Slaughter for a Q&A. So go ahead and introduce yourself, everybody.
Hi, my name is Selena Kabara. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Mango Factory and Director of Kumitantei Old School Slaughter.
My name is Emily Putoff. I'm the lead designer, a pixel artist, and programmer for Kumitantei Old School Slaughter.
I'm Gal to the rescue, or Gal, and I'm the lead animator and motion graphic designer for Kumitantei Old School Slaughter.
And I'm Detective Neeks, a niche internet micro-celebrity and also the scenario writer of Kumitantei Old School Slaughter.
It's time to A some Qs.
We're gonna do an A&A. We're gonna receive answers to questions, and we all have to just ad-lib another answer.
So, first question. I think a lot of people have seen the trailers, and obviously comparisons have been made to Danganronpa. So, is this Danganronpa or a fan project, or is this something completely different?
Well, Kumitantei is an original game that takes a lot of inspiration from the DR series. The core format of 16 elite students being forced to kill each other by an animal mascot is, well, as we've shown, adapted very faithfully. Considering the many, many years without a new game in the Danganronpa series and the generally uncertain future of the series after V3, we recognized the demand for this sort of game and wanted to make something that can scratch that itch while providing a unique flavor.
Awesome sauce. So, what's the history of the project been like? Have the direction and the team always been the same?
Well, Kumitantei did start as a Danganronpa fan project. I had worked on it for fun during the pandemic, in between other games that I was working on. I had become a fan of Danganronpa the year prior and thought it would be interesting as a side project to make my own cast and write a story with them. Over the next few years, it kind of developed into a much larger scale project with around 10 volunteers working with me. And we were all really proud of what we created. The team has been remarkably consistent during that time, with the majority of key members either joining or contributing to the project within the first year. Of course, there have been some additions and departures, but the creative and narrative direction have always been the same.
Awesome, awesome. So, who would you say are the project's biggest inspirations, or what might they be?
Well, aside from Danganronpa, that's the big one. The other thing that I would say is probably Urusei Yatsura, the iconic romantic comedy from Rumiko Takahashi. I had grown up watching classic anime like Urusei Yatsura, Dr. Slump, and Ranma 1/2, often on undubbed bootleg VHS tapes that my older sisters and cousins had acquired. And as a kid, you can watch the same few episodes of a show over and over again without getting bored. So eventually, they just got burned into my brain, to be honest. These series were full of a lot of strange and silly characters that were a lot deeper than they'd initially seemed, and it made it rewarding to try to learn to empathize with them in spite of being so out there. Kumitantei is very much a reflection of that philosophy.
Awesome. So, what made you guys decide to make this an original game?
Well, like I had said, we had started as a tiny Danganronpa project in early 2020, with our team being a bunch of artists and game devs with a lot of free time during the pandemic. And over a shared love of Danganronpa's tone and storytelling, we put our whole hearts into making something that captured them. Naturally, though, as the world opened back up and we needed to start thinking about getting back to our paid work, we began to feel like it was kind of a shame not being able to put this on our resumes, since it was a fan game, despite how much care and love and effort we put in. So we decided to cancel the fan game, strip out all of the Danganronpa branding and direct references, and basically start over with the intention of making Kumitantei its own distinct game while maintaining the vision we had been going for it.
Side note, I feel like y'all should keep like a couple of Danganronpa references in there. Just like, just get like a little Easter egg here and there. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like.
Oh,
I mean,
no, yeah, we do. We do. Don't worry.
Perfect. So, let's see. Why the 1980s time period and aesthetic? Am I right? Is it based in the 80s or the 90s? What would you say about that? And is it like important to the plotline that it's set in the 80s?
Yes, actually. Originally, we had set the story in present day, following the format of the DR series. But in the process of transitioning over to an original indie game, we had decided to rethink our approach. Changing the art style wouldn't really be enough to give Kumitantei its own identity, so I thought back on my longtime creative inspirations and pitched that we fused them together. Kumitantei gained a retro 1980s anime-inspired art style and visual language, and we started talking about relocating the story to the same period for the sake of consistency. We adjusted the story and characters to fit, and used the opportunity to immerse the game in that decade's Japanese culture.
Awesome. All right, so let's ask some questions for our scenario writer, Detective Neeks. So, Nix, is there an overarching theme to the story, and why are these kids killing each other?
Well, the trailer gave a slight peek, and I'm admittedly not sure how much Lena is going to let me reveal, but the text in the trailer wasn't just flavor text. The killing game is intended to literally put one's humanity to a test. The people who set up the killing game did it to push people to and past the breaking point of their psyche, to the point where their empathy simply just fails them, and they emotionally disengage. That plays into the themes the game is trying to express. Empathy isn't always the easiest road to take. It may or may not be human nature. But to show empathy or to turn away from it is always a choice. Empathy brings us together and strengthens us, and if we truly abandon it, what exactly makes us human?
Very, very true. So in the trailer, we saw that there were talents for each character, and that's a bit of a parallel to Danganronpa. So how did you decide on the absolute talents, and why are they important?
The talents were chosen based on multiple factors, weighing in what role the associated character needed to fill in the story, and how their talent would incorporate into that, how the talent itself related to the themes of empathy and apathy, and if the talent made sense for the time period, so we weren't going to have any, iPhone babies. Absolute talents are really important to the story and world building, as shown in the reveal trailer. Their establishment is where Kumitantei's version of Japan in the 20th century diverges from ours, and then they also steer the actions of the class during the experiment.
There you go. You heard it here first. There's no iPad, skibbity toilet, absolute talents here. So very interesting to know. Will there be any branching paths or different endings?
I don't actually know. Branching paths in the story would have to find a way to reconnect into the narrative, so they probably wouldn't be very long if I do add them. I wouldn't mind adding an alternate ending or two, though. I kind of love bad endings when they're done well, and personally I think a game like this could benefit from a true empath ending, where all trust among all participants of the experiment is maxed out, and you might see a bonus ending scene or some sort of reward for maxing out trust with everyone.
Like a Steam achievement or something like that?
Might be a little bit more than a Steam achievement, but yeah.
Epic. So, in Danganronpa V3, we had the protagonist switch from Kaede to Shuichi. So, in this game, will there be a protagonist switch, or will you be able to play as any other characters or have a male protagonist?
The idea for a male protagonist for Kumitantei Old School Slaughter, I don't think ever came up over development until extremely recently. Given the story is very character-driven, a protagonist switch or ability to play as a male protagonist would effectively require another script written to set the whole game from that character's perspective. I will say we aren't explicitly planning to retread ground in terms of Danganronpa's usual tropes.
Fair. And this is probably the most important question I have for you. Do Benjiro's bees have names?
Yes, they do. Do not ask me to identify which bee is which. I suck with names to faces. But the names are Buzzy, Fuzzy, Muzzy, Wuzzy, Ozzy, Dizzy, and Madeline.
Why Madeline? Why Madeline?
You know.
There's always the one. There's always the one.
Fair. Alright, so who is my art and animation expert?
This one's Guile.
All right,
That's
wanna?
me.
All right, cool.
Though
cool.
our lead artist is supposed to be the other person, Aoyen Gu, but she can't make it today, so I'll be substituting for her to answer her question for her.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. So, when developing the art style, what did you use to make the sprites, and how did you develop the art style?
Well, the art style for this game was heavily inspired by the work of Rumiko Takahashi, as Lena mentioned earlier. And well, our lead artist put a lot of effort into researching the style and adapting it into its own thing, with her own spin on top of it, which led us to this game's current looks today. As for what we used for making the sprite, she mainly used Site 2 and Clip Studio Paint. And since we're on this topic, I might as well answer what I use for my work too. I mostly work on animation and like editing and all that, and so I use Clip Studio Paint to draw the CGs and 2D animation, while I use After Effects for the editing and post-processing.
Awesome. Will there be like any animated cutscenes?
Oh yeah, there will definitely be more animated scene in the future, including the execution. They're like the highlights of our game. They're like it's like our selling point and all that. So we want to utilize them as much as possible.
Very awesome. Is every character sprite animated? How many of them are there?
For what's being animated in them is mostly going to be their faces that will be animated, like their eyes blinking and mouth moving when they talk. Unless those parts are obscured in those particular poses, like their arm blocking the way or things like that. Either way, yeah, every sprite will be animated.
What characters are your favorite to draw, and which are your favorite sprites?
Aoyen said that she doesn't have any favorite character to draw or like a favorite sprite in particular. She kind of likes everything she makes, though she does like drawing Kaguya skirts in particular. And for me, I don't think I have any particular favorite either. Though if I have to pick one, then I guess it would be Nisuke, because he tends to be the easiest one to draw for me. As for the sprite, I really like Kogoro's sprite. He's like a really expressive character, and his sprites are just so fun and like full of personality.
Gotcha. I feel like lots of artists would like to draw. So we'll see if we get like any awesome fan art between now and the demo dropping.
Yeah, I love to see the fan arts and all that. Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Awesome sauce. Will you have an animated opening movie?
There won't be any in the demo right now, but we would really like to have it in the final release. We got some really cool fan for it, and that will be worth the wait.
Awesome. So now I have some gameplay questions. My gameplay rep, who would that be?
That would be me.
So why a card game, and what's the premise of it?
So initially we wanted to have sort of RPG turn-based battles to sort of reflect the debate. It was going to be a little bit more awkward, a bit more weird, but and we also wanted some sort of core idea to build the game around, and we went through a lot of iterations, and eventually we decided on making it a card game. It gave us a really nice aesthetic to fit with everything else, and it worked really well with what we had going. That decision was made before I had joined, but after I joined, I had sort of refreshed the system and like properly integrated it with everything.
Gotcha. What's the structure of the game like? Are there chapters or trials?
The game's split into episodes, which are effectively chapters, and then those are split into different types of gameplay. Free time, investigation, and trials. During free time, you can talk and hang out with the other characters in order to build trust, go shopping, or just explore if you want to. During investigations is when you need to start gathering some evidence to use during the trial, just going through different rooms. It's what you would expect. And then trials, obviously, is where a lot of things start to come together. We have the card battles, the retro minigames, and more.
Very cool. How do those retro minigames work, and how are they designed?
So the retro minigames have two types of gameplay. During the trials, they're sort of like remixes. They're a lot more short, with very specific goals, like collecting a specific pickup or gaining some amount of score. Meanwhile, in the arcade, you can sort of play them as more full games, with the goal being just get as high of a score as you can. And the way we design them is we just try to figure out types of games that give us a lot of freedom for making those remixes. And we try to take inspiration from, obviously, classic NES games wherever we can.
That's always a good thing to do. Will there be any additional game modes, like a dating sim or like a post game kind of like island mode kind of thing, like from Danganronpa, something similar to that?
We would definitely like to, but it is not currently our priority. Once the game is finished, we will likely add something.
And final question for you: what engine are you using for the game?
So originally the game in its earlier days was being made in Unity, but some stuff happened with Unity and just we went looking through other engines, and Godot is what we ultimately went with. Lightweight, open source, it's completely free, and just I've really enjoyed using it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, are you all working full time on the project?
Some of us are, some of us aren't. It really is dependent on our financial situations prior to the Kickstarter campaign. We all work as hard as we can, as much as we can already, but getting funding will allow our team to solely focus on Kumitantei without needing to take on side gigs to stay afloat.
And speaking of the funding, what kind of rewards will there be on Kickstarter? Anything special for higher tiers that we can expect?
The Kickstarter will have rewards for a wide range of contribution amounts, including special discounts for early birds. You'll be able to get essentials like digital copies of Kumitantei and its soundtrack, a special backer-exclusive gift in the game, and even some physical items like replicas of the in-game talent cards, which are holographic, by the way, and even an art book. The big one, though, our highest tier, will let the backer collaborate with us and our writing team to fully incorporate their own original character into the game's story. We call it I Am Become Canon. Hopefully someone will take us up on that.
How much is that? Do you remember?
I would have to check.
A small price to pay for salvation, though.
Yeah, it's like $5,000 or something.
A very small price to pay for salvation. All right. So when will the game release? Yeah, true.
Sorry.
So when will the game release, and in what way? Are there going to be a physical release, like in stores, or releases on additional platforms?
Our goal is to release Kumitantei in digital storefronts in the third quarter of 2027, with our focus being on Nintendo Switch and Steam. We would like to support additional platforms and or do a physical release, but that's currently outside the scope of our plans, and we'll likely need to wait until later. So stay tuned on that.
Gotcha. So will there be voice acting and or an open casting call?
The demo version of Kumitantei Old School Slaughter will not have voice acting, neither at launch or in a later update. However, we do intend to have full voice acting in the completed game, and are already in talks to cast privately, though this has been delayed by the recent SAG-AFTRA strike against big video game companies. We stand with the union in support of greater protections and security for voice talents in the face of AI's proliferation.
So how can the community help? Is there a way to monetarily support you after the Kickstarter?
Well, really the biggest way to support us is to spread the word. Tell your friends to check out the trailers and wishlist on Steam. Tell your favorite YouTubers and streamers to cover the game. And especially make sure to go click the Notify Me button on our Kickstarter page. Our Kickstarter will be accepting late pledges even, so after the campaign ends, you'll still be able to support us through there.
Awesome, good to hear that. And my final question, I saw the trailer, I've seen the character art. Shigure is my favorite, even though I know nothing about her. So can anybody tell me why Shigure is the best character in the game?
Goth Fatty, we stand on God.
No more elaboration needed. Thank you, guys.
I can elaborate if you like.
Go for it, yes.
I don't need to sleep anymore. I could spend restless nights thinking about Shigure, who was sent by the gates of heaven, of course. I think I am blessed. I think I am the luckiest human on planet Earth. We're all normal about her, we swear. And yet she's only my third favorite.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't imagine what the first would be like.
No, not at all, not at all. All right, well, that was the developer Q&A with the staff of Kumitantei Old School Slaughter. My name has been Nuko4. Thank you for watching. This was very fun to do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Wishlist Kumitantei right now. I'm holding you at gunpoint. Go wishlist it.
Please, we're
True.
begging you.
I'm no
We're
longer
gonna
asking.
This is no longer an ask.
Help, I've been trapped in the story mines for 3 weeks.
Well, maybe we'd let you out if you got back to work.